right, if you guys would put your hands together, warm welcome for Peter Soutullo.
Welcome back, guys. Hand lettering part 2. I just want to take the opportunity and thank Dina for actually having me come and introduce her. That is a really big notch in my cap, and I'm happy to do it. So if y'all are ready for part 2, some little hands-on hand lettering, Dina Rodriguez.
Hey guys, I've been wanting to do this all day. Are you ready to letter? Awesome. Okay, so at this point, we are going to digitalize our lettering. So yes, a laptop's open. We're going to go through Photoshop and Illustrator. Just to let you guys know what's going to happen today is if you didn't get a chance to scan in your artwork today, I do have files available for you. So if you haven't got the opportunity, please go to lettershop.com/HOF-day2 to access a copy of this presentation if my website does not crash again. And then we're going to do a little bit of a tutorial. I want you guys to follow along with me. Don't expect that you're going to finish this piece right now. I'm just going to kind of show you the ins and outs of how we're going to kind of form our letters into Photoshop, clean up our work. And then we're going to take questions. And then the majority of this workshop today will be you guys working and me kind of walking around helping you, since we only had about 15 minutes during yesterday's workshop. So let me go ahead and pull everything up for you. Awesome. Today, we are going to jump into the Adobe Suite to perfect and digitalize our hand lettering. So you guys obviously scanned in your artwork, so we're good on that point. So I want you guys to first open up Photoshop and place your scanned PDF file into an 8.5 by 11 document. And at this point, I'm just going to go back and forth between my actual copy of my presentation and Photoshop so you guys can kind of see me doing stuff. So I went ahead, and this is the piece that I was working on for AIGA. Typography at its best is a visual form linking timelessness in time. So I haven't edited this piece. So the first thing we're going to do, and I hope you guys are using the latest version of Creative Cloud for the Adobe Suite, I'd hope. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the Adjustments panel. So let's go to Edit. Oh, just kidding. Let's rasterize our layer first. Select the layer. I hear that helps. Image, Adjustments, Levels. And we're just going to pull on both these levers, go towards the center. We're going to make our blackers blacker and our whiters whiter. Just so we really make sure that the optimum contrast for our lettering is just really visible, because eventually we're going to take out this background and it's going to save us a lot of trouble. And if any point during this workshop you guys are allowed to raise your hands, the questions are more than welcome during this entire time, not just the end. Great. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is a little trick that I like to do to get rid of any gobbledygook that you have in the background. This could be eraser marks if you guys hadn't erased all your pencil markings before you inked it. This can be, sometimes there's dirt on your scanner that you need to get rid of. It's going to be really weird, but trust me, it works. So we're going to go ahead and select our layer, double-click, get to our layer styles, click on stroke. I want you guys to pick a funky color. I'm going to choose this bright blue over here. We're going to do our stroke at 10 pixels. Oh, sorry, I skipped a step, guys. I was like, you guys probably like, what is she talking about? All right, just kidding. Just kidding, error, human, made a mistake. Okay, so actually what we're going to do, guys, is get rid of our background. So now we're going to go to Select, Color Range, and we're going to select the white background. And I want you guys to put your fuzziness all the way to the max. Hit OK. You guys get the dancing ants. Yep. Go ahead and hit delete. Boom. And you guys can hit Command D to deselect your dancing ants. Boop. And now we're going to go ahead and add. My computer is too tiny. Hold on. I hit this button, There we go. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and add the background layer back. So new layer, put it towards the bottom, fill it with white, either with the paint bucket tool or edit, layer, fill new white. Boop. Now we're going to add the stroke. Double click, get into our layer styles here, guys. Stroke. There we go. Add a funky color. 10 pixels. And at any point, if I'm going too fast for you guys, this is very basic stuff. Just let me know. 10 pixels. Now, at this point, you guys should see a bunch of chicken pox all over your piece, unless you guys just have a better scanner than I do. This is a great way to get rid of any scuff marks you guys have in the background. This is going to help you a ton by the time you get into Illustrator. So just take a moment and erase some of that gobbledygook. Just pull out the eraser tool just directly. Don't need to worry about masks or anything like that. So you're just going to take a few minutes to do this. Now I'm going to breeze through this part, depending on how much gobbledygook you guys have. How messy are you guys' documents? Are they really messy? Or you guys are clean? Awesome. My scanner just isn't as good as yours. Okay, now we got rid of some of our gobbledygook. What?
No, I was gonna ask, what happens when the stuff is inside the text? Like
Oh, make sure that your stroke is set to outside. So if you guys didn't see a stroke, just make sure it's set to outside. There we go. So yeah, again, if there's stuff like that, if you're lost, if I missed a step, please just tell me. Yeah. I know you guys are like, what is she talking about? So I'm going to breeze through this. I'm really going to just show you the steps, because this is going to take a lot longer than just the 90 minutes we have for this workshop, guys.
She does 10 pixels and it's way too thick. It does totally different than what you have.
Oh, what's your resolution at? Is it at 300? 72. Oh, okay, yeah. If you have it 72, then just do a lower pixel width. It doesn't really matter if you guys did scan it in at 300 or 72, because we are going to vectorize this. It's just you're going to have a cleaner scan if you did scan it at 300. So maybe later or tomorrow, just scan it at a little bit higher resolution. Of course. All right, guys, now we're going to go ahead, and I want you to pull up your rulers, hit Command-R to pull up your rulers, just so you can see, just like on my screen. And we're going to create a grid. So go ahead and just select over your rulers and drag a guide for any horizontal or vertical line. So first I'm going to start at the outside. So I'm just dragging these guides. Now, if you notice that your composition is just really tiny on the 8.5 by 11, you can go ahead and feel free to transform that to make it fill the page if it's really tiny. And then once you have your basic margin in place for your piece, I want you to go ahead and add any sort of guides to any horizontal or vertical straight lines. So I have one already on the top of my typography, and this is really going to show you what mistakes you made. So obviously this piece has a bunch of mistakes in it, which I'm going to show you how to fix in a little bit. So as you can see, my O is a little too low, my G is a little bit too low, and I'm going to show you guys how to fix that using the lasso tool and cut. Now, you could do this in Illustrator, but I like Photoshop because of the skew tool, which I think it's a lot easier to kind of do this prep work before you actually go to vectorize your actual hand lettering. Put all my guides in place. Awesome. One more left. Great. All right, now some of you might have a diagonal, right? So for that, we're going to go to our Shapes tool. See the little rectangle tool? Click it, go to Line. As soon as my laptop wants me to do that. Come on, little guy. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and select Red, just so I can see this. So for example, my best is supposed to be on an arch, so I'm literally just going to drag this stroke diagonally, like that. Right now it's at 1 point, so you see at the top of your menu, you can go ahead and change your point. I'm going to do it at, let's just something around 3 or 2, 4, whatever my hand wants to click on. Cool. And then I'm pretty much just going to, so I'm on this layer right now. I'm just going to hit Option and then click down to copy and just duplicate it. Because the top line should be at the exact same angle as the bottom line, right? Now, anything where you have swooshes and stuff, that's something you could take a Wacom tablet and manually put your guides in. But for now, let's just stick to anything straight or diagonal. So now we have our guides in place. If you guys have multiple lines that you added, go ahead and just group them in a folder. Go ahead and select all of them. You can hit Shift to make sure you select on all of them. Put them in a folder just to make sure you keep your files organized, guys. Go ahead and name it Guides. Okay, now this might seem pretty straightforward, but a lot of people actually miss the opportunity to clean up their lettering. So we're actually going to go here and use the lasso tool to cut out each word. And then we're going to focus, for right now, I'm just going to focus on the word typography, because we're not going to have enough time for me to edit this entire piece for you. So let me go ahead, take the lasso tool right over here, and just select around your word that you want to cut out, the first word. And I'm going to go, so right now it's connecting to my guides. So I'm going to go to View, Snap to, and then Unmark Guides, so that way my guides aren't getting in the way. There we go. And now I'm not being forced to hit any certain peaks. I can just gracefully and beautifully use the lasso tool to go around my letters. Do that. And also, if it's just a straightforward, you could also just use the marquee tool. Go ahead, once you get the dancing ants, hit right-click, layer via copy. Sorry. Oop. I was on the wrong layer. Layer via cut. There we go. So now we have typography cut out. Now I'm going to have you guys turn the eyeball off, the rest of your letters, and just focus on the first word of your composition. Now we can actually go in here and see all of the mistakes. So everything that we learned yesterday about the do's and the don'ts of hand lettering. So remember, anything that has a bold, like an O or a G or a C, needs to go a little bit above the cap height and a little bit below the baseline. So remember these rules. So right now we're really just going to focus on spacing, alignment to our grid, and kerning. Now, if you guys still need to fix your kerning, we're going to cut out each of these letters individually and then make sure our spacing looks good. Yesterday, we learned the water bubble technique, where you guys actually draw in a volume of water in between your spaces to visually be able to see the differences between your spaces. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to cut out each letter. Or if you guys did a really good job on your lettering, only cut out the letters that need to be edited. But in my case, they all need to be edited. Keep in mind, if you guys get an error, it just means you selected the wrong layer. I do that all the time. So again, just using the lasso tool, cutting it out. Is anyone having any issues at all? Good. Awesome. To save on time, I'm just going to take out typo. And I'm just going to go ahead, zoom in real close, really focus on your lettering. And now we're simply just going to transform it. So first thing I see, I'm going to start with the O here. Click on it. Just make it go a little bit above and below the baseline, so it's just a little off. About like that, seems right. Same thing with the P. Y is good, T is good. All right, awesome. So I'm noticing that my T, my Y, and my P are a lot lower than my O. So we're not going to stretch it. We're going to select any letters. We're going to hit Command-T to transform. And we're actually going to hit Shift so we keep the aspect ratio of our letters. Boop. And then you can go ahead, take the P, So it went a little bit too high. Edit it manually. Great. Make sure you stay within their guides. Now, let's say, so this Y is a little bit kinked. It's not perfectly straight. I can tell because the T is pretty straight. And we can go ahead and show our grids by going Command quote, I think. Command quote. There we go. You actually pull up your grids. That's a really good way to see how straight on a vertical axis that your lettering might be. I don't want you to be too perfect with this because, again, we want to keep that hand ref texture. It's hand-drawn. It should look hand-drawn. So that Y is a little kink. So I'm actually going to click on this Y. I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Skew. Now you guys can either click either one of the corners of the bounding box or click the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and just go a little slide over to the left, just make it a little bit straight. Now that I have my command quote guides on, straighten out just a little bit. So that's pretty much how we're going to manually edit this piece. Now this is going to take you guys a lot longer than just this section, and we are going to continue to move forward. Let me skip back into my presentation, see where we're at. Okay, so something that I like to do to clean up my lettering. Now, if you look at the before and after of this piece, so it looks really dirty, right? It has the scuff marks, it has the texture. There's a few things that I'd love to fix in this piece now that we're super zoomed in. The stem of my T, for example, is actually thinner than my crossbar. So I would actually go in with my Wacom tablet and make that a little bit thicker. And it's totally doable to use your trackpad to digitally paint. When I was at Full Sail, I didn't have a Wacom tablet, I didn't have the money, but this was me. Click this on the trackpad for hours and hours and hours. Now, you don't necessarily need a Wacom tablet to clean up your lettering. You could just use the trackpad. And you don't obviously need to have a picture-perfect piece of lettering, but if you guys want to get into super perfection mode, it is a nice option. Or if you just work on one big word and just really focus on it, because the bigger your lettering is, obviously an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, the more details you can be. Not sure if you guys have long quotes or short quotes. This piece was a lot. It was a pretty long quote, so I couldn't get too detailed. So I did spend, I think, about 3 or 4 hours cleaning up this piece with my Wacom tablet. So you can see the before and after. So go ahead and pull it up. If I turn my eyeballs back on. Before. After. Now, there's a lot of changes that I made to this piece. For example, I originally had swirls, and I decided, you know what, those swirls aren't really taking up the same amount of space. I'm going to use lines. Don't feel that because you drew it beforehand, you have to stick to that drawing. Anything that will perfect your lettering, just by a smidge, even if it's a quarter of a space, or I'm going to use straight lines and using a swirl, that's totally fine. It's an editing process. Whatever you think is best, whatever reaches of your creativity you can grasp. So pretty much, we're going to get to the point where we're going to merge all of our layers and make sure we're only staying in black and white. Okay, and that's all you really guys need to do in Photoshop. It's just really easy because of the skew tool specifically and the guides. Now we're going to hop into Illustrator. Now there is a separate file for that is finished, so you guys will see this layer. Now, who here received the welcome email this morning? Anybody? No one received you received a welcome email? Who here, raise your hand if you didn't sign up if you didn't actually put your email and your name from yesterday's workshop. You never got the email? Gosh darn it. All right, guys, so for this section of the tutorial, I'm just going to show you. It's pretty straightforward, and then we're going to finish up. There's only a few more minutes of this part, and then it's really going to be lab from this point on. So you guys on the internet, follow along best you can, okay? All right, so I've placed my cleaned up piece of lettering into Illustrator. And now what we're going to do is called creating organic vectors. There's a bunch of different ways, guys, to vectorize your lettering. You can use shapes, You can use the pen tool. I personally love using perfectly vertical and horizontal Bezier curves. And if you sign up for my newsletter at lettershop.com, I do have a bunch of tutorials and additional ways to learn lettering, even after this workshop that we're not going to cover. But for now, we're going to use image trace. And image trace gets a bad rep. A lot of people, especially when I was here at Full Sail, used it to posterize everything. Pictures, they would steal images from Google Image and use it in projects. It was just gross. But there is a use case for this amazing tool, especially when it comes to lettering and keeping the integrity of your lines and that kind of roughness that you had with your hand with image trace versus making it perfectly smooth, like using the pen tool or using shapes. So I'm actually going to click on my layer, and we're just going to jump right into image trace. Dun, dun, dun. So I'm actually going to go into my presentation instead for this part. My computer's not being the best today. All right, so at this point, you are going to create an 18 by 24 poster in Illustrator. And then you're going to place your new cleaned up lettering into Illustrator, because we are working on an 18 by 24, obviously in CMYK. Now, it's always important to create a bleed. I think a standard industry ratio is really just 0.125 or 1/8. Yeah. Well, we're going to be vectorizing it, so it's not really important for the resolution, but when you guys did scan your original artwork, it'll be a lot easier to use the image trace tool if it was 300 to 600 DPI. If you only scanned it at 72, it's not going to be able to get really detailed and get the jaggedies. It's going to overly smooth it, exactly. So in this tutorial, I'm actually using, like I said, the latest version of Creative Cloud for the Adobe Suite for Illustrator. So on the very top, I click on it, and I just immediately hit image trace. Just jump right in. And then you can click this dialog box right here to open your settings. It should look something like this. Now, I want you guys to click the drop-down tool for the advanced settings. I like to always start, there's a bunch of different presets that are already within Illustrator. I think a good way to start is just black and white. A lot of hand lettering artists will actually create their own preset in Illustrator, but since not all hand lettering pieces are created equal, I tend to just kind of do it manually every time. It takes a few extra minutes, but if it's going to make my work just a little bit better, I think it's worth the effort. Now, it's important to make sure that you have preview selected as you're testing your different levels of image trace, and ignore white, just in case. All right, now when you guys are moving those toggles, you might be moving it and you're not really seeing a big difference. But if you notice at the bottom of the dialog box, let me pull it up, right here towards the bottom, it tells you how many paths and how many anchors you have. So if you're moving those sliders and you're not really seeing a visual difference in your hand lettering, that means the only difference that it's creating is it's actually just making your file size a lot bigger by adding more anchor points. So the more anchor points will go to the right, the less anchor points will go to the left of the slider. So for my piece, I pretty much went with, I think these settings, yeah. Is anyone having any issues or any questions at this point? Okay, cool. When I hear mumbling, I think there's questions. Okay. All right, so at this point, you're going to go ahead and just hit OK in your image trace file. Now, at this point, where we've zoomed into our lettering, we've used image trace, we have a technically vector piece of our lettering. Now, at this point, yes, we could get to color and we could get to texture, but if there's any opportunities where you can fix your lettering, please do it. So there's an amazing tool called the Smooth tool. Now, I love this tool. It's great. So, for example, I have this letter H. There's a bunch of different ways to clamp your lettering, but if you're noobs to Illustrator, I think it's a good opportunity. So I have this H. It looks great, but I'm seeing this little divot on the right side of the stem. So I went ahead and just took the Smooth tool. I clicked on the letter H, selected it from the left-hand panel, and I just wrote over it. Now, we could have done this easily with the pen tool. So if you hit minus on your keyboard, that's the shortcut to get the negative anchor point tool. And I could have just simply deleted those anchor points. So at this point, I really want you guys to be zooming into your lettering. I want you guys to just really focus, zoom out, zoom in. You guys obviously can do changing edits. If you're seeing spatial issues, if your line height is inconsistent, if there's last-minute kernings, you can obviously ungroup all your letters and manually select and move and just really get what I like to call, again, perfection mode. Now, I'm really excited to show you this next piece because personally, my favorite hand lettering artist in the entire world is Mary Kate McDivitt. I actually have a tattoo on my hand that she made. It means never quit. I'm obsessed with this woman. She taught me a lot of great things, especially on Skillshare. And I like to add a lot of drop shadows to my work. If you look at any pieces of my portfolio, I love adding that extra depth, and it's a new opportunity for color. So most people will go into the 3D panel to add a drop shadow in Illustrator, but I'm going to show you a different way. So first, we're going to take the first word that we want to go ahead and add the drop shadow to and group it together by hitting Command-G. Then we're going to select and hit Command-C to copy and Command-F to place. So all we're doing, it's just a bunch of shortcuts, is duplicating that same word, placing it on top, and then locking it. Then you're going to go ahead and take that same layer, click a different color, green, blue, yellow, whatever you want. Now this is the cool part. You're going to actually go ahead and hit Option, and you're going to go ahead and duplicate that layer, just slightly, just in the direction of where you want the drop shadow to go. And then if you just hit Command-D, it'll actually duplicate that transformation, and the more times you hit duplicate, the more and thicker it will make your letters. So again, we're going to hit Command-C to copy. We're going to hit Command-V to copy in place. And then we're going to hit Command-2 to lock. And then, because I know it's like a little bit of a weird thing, especially since I'm unfortunately not able to show it to you on my computer. And you're going to hit Option to duplicate and just put it a little bit, say if you want it just to go to the bottom right, a little bit to the right. And then Command-D to duplicate that transformation. You hit it a couple times. I think in my piece I did it about 10 times. And I had this beautiful drop shadow. And I'll be walking around to you guys individually just in case, because I'm not able to show it to you to be able to make sure it works for you. Now, your piece is going to look something like this. Now, what we're about to do will crash your computer if you do it wrong. So it's really important, so whatever word you want to add a drop shadow to, do it individually. So we're going to use the Pathfinder tool, and we're actually going to collapse, because what it did, it actually created a bunch of layers for our drop shadow guys, and we really want to make sure that that's all one on the same path and it's on the same shape. So we're going to go ahead and select it, and then we're going to go ahead and add the Pathfinder tool and combine it. Because if you do it all at once, it takes a lot of RAM, and your stuff will crash. So before you do this, please hit Save. Now, all that's left, so since we duplicated, as you can see, you can literally see what we call a staircase in our duplication for our drop shadow. We could easily go in there manually and subtract it, or we could use the Smooth tool just to overline it and make it smooth. Another thing important to note is so let's say for this example, we went ahead and we wanted all of the letters to have a drop shadow. Just keep in mind that not all drop shadows are created equal. Because best and time are so large, if I would have duplicated them at the same time, it would have been way thinner. So if you look at its and best and is a, I actually went ahead and made that drop shadow on all of my lettering. But then best, it's just not big enough, so I actually went ahead and best on its own layer did that same process. So that way it could look like this instead. Now we're going to jump into adding color. Okay, guys, so it's really important to choose colors that will give more meaning to your piece. I don't want you to choose blue because it's your favorite color. I want you to choose blue because you want it to feel cold or seasonal or wintry. We really want to use our color theory in our pieces because typography in hand lettering is amazing because it gives more meaning behind our words, and we really want to use that color palette to our best of ability. So go ahead and start playing with swatches. And something I like to do before I even go into Illustrator or anything is I'll actually write down what kind of colors I want to use. So that way I'm not color picking. I really want to think about the meaning behind the colors. So for this piece, I'm thinking I want to do something kind of old school Americana. So I literally write down blue, red, creams, maybe black, maybe gray, just any idea I can think of. So that way I'm pulling from my own creativity instead of looking at other inspiration. So you have a good starting point. Now, I will be the first person to admit that I suck, like really suck at picking colors. I'm the worst. But I think if you have a good baseline of where you want to start from, dribble.com is amazing. It's my personal favorite platform to get inspiration from. Now, since I already know kind of an idea of what kind of feel I want to go for my lettering, I literally go into Dribbble and I type blue lettering. I like a bunch of things. And these are the kind of pieces that I'm feeling really close with, that I'm connecting with, that I think might be a good possibility to add to my lettering. So I literally drag those pieces into Illustrator, and I eyedrop them. Usually I don't straight up steal them, but it's a good starting point. Usually you can play with the CMYK at this point. Now, Mama Sauce specifically likes to use Pantones, and a lot of printers do too. And they like to use uncoated Pantone for the PMS swatch colors. Now, at this point, you only have CMY colors in your piece, but in order to send it to print, you really need to use Pantone. So an easier way to do this, and sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's always good to try and it'll save you a bunch of time. So when you're in Illustrator, you're actually going to go to Window, Swatch Libraries, Color Books, Pantone, and then select Solid Uncoated if that's what the printer needs, to pull up your color panel. And it looks something like this. And what you would do is you would actually select all of your things in your artboard, do the steps that I just mentioned, and it'll automatically switch your CMYK values to whatever color swatch book you guys need. Now for my piece, it actually worked really well. On the left-hand side is my original CMYK, and on the right side is the Pantone. Depending on the computer monitor, it's a very subtle difference. I can't even see it. So it did a really excellent job. So sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. But for the most part, do it first to save yourself some time. And then you can go in manually, go into the PMS swatch colors under Window, and plug and play. But this should save you a little bit of time. And now we're going to talk about adding texture. I love adding texture to all my pieces, even though there's already that handmade texture from when I actually physically drew my piece. I think a little splash of a little something special really just makes it over the top. Now, you can go crazy with texture, depending if you're going for that crazy grungy look, or you can do really subtly. I typically like to go somewhere in the middle. So I actually have a link to 9 free vector grunge textures you guys can add to your pieces. And I like to use these textures almost like a brush. Another great place to find textures is Creative Market. They have a great selection for if you guys want to add actually a few bucks to your, just $3 or $5. And they have ones that are specifically made for lettering that I think would add a lot of personality to your pieces. So you go ahead and select the kind of texture you guys want to use from the free set, or you can use Creative Market if you want a little something extra special. And I want you guys to create different layers in your Illustrator file to make sure everything stays organized. So that means I want your background layer to be on its own layer, your background color, I want you to have your type on its own layer, and then a new layer for your texture. So that way we're just not clogging up our system. And always remember to hit save. When I first started doing it, I actually had a timer that went off every 30 minutes to remind me to save my work, because I have lost my work more times than I can possibly count for you, especially working at Full Sail. One time, I had to stay up for literally 48 hours to turn in a piece because I forgot to hit save for a month-long project. It was not the best. Learn from me. Now, for this piece, I selected this texture here in the center. And because I wanted a more subtle approach to my texture, I shrunk it down really little. And I went ahead and I just duplicated it all over my lettering. Now, if you want the texture to be big, obviously you would just scale up your texture. But if you want it to be subtle, go ahead and duplicate it. Now, at this point, you might notice that the texture has lines or really noticeable repeating shapes. You could easily rotate, mirror, skew your kind of texture, so that way it doesn't look so repeated. Now, sometimes it would be easier just to kind of go in and manually maybe erase. Maybe you have a line or a crease that keeps repeating that you just want to manually remove. A great way to do this is go ahead and hit Command-Y for outline mode. And because you have everything in your own layer, just select your texture layer and just go in with the eraser tool. Just erase anything you need to get rid of. I personally like using outline mode because it actually uses less RAM in my computer, because depending on how many times I'm duplicating this texture is really going to slow down my computer. In this particular, when I was getting ready for this presentation, my computer crashed twice. So definitely hit save, and outline mode will save you a lot of headache. And it's a lot easier to see everything at once while staying on the same layer of Illustrator. Now, we are breezing through this workshop because I do want the point of the second day to be you guys working and me walking around, since unfortunately yesterday we only had 15 minutes. So right here, I actually do include a video of Mama Sauce's print-ready procedures, and they use something called making your work idiot-proof. This means no matter if there's an intern working on your work, and it's going to look good, and it's going to look exactly the way it would on your screen, but just keep in mind that when light and white comes through your screen, it actually turns out brighter than it would on paper. But PMS colors will obviously keep the integrity of your color a lot more than using CMYK. So let's talk about that. So we're only going to go over 2 steps. There's a few things I'm sure your instructors have gone over, but I'm just going to review. First thing we're going to do is double check our artboard. Again, 18 by 24. We want to make sure we at least have a 1.25 bleed. So that way, none of our pieces get messed up. Then also, we want to leave a margin. I usually like to leave about 1 inch, typically, just to make sure no matter how they're cropping and cutting my piece, my lettering, my beautiful lettering that has been so long me working on, doesn't get cut off. Now, Mama Sauce, which I never did this before I watched this video, they actually want you to select each Pantone color and have it on its own layer. So we've already organized our layers. So at this point, you just start grouping your words together, and all the ones that have the same color, you merge, and then you just name the layer after the Pantone. And for you guys that are actually going to submit your artwork for this design competition, it is a requirement for you to label your layers this way. If you guys miss this instruction, I'm not going to grade it. It's not going to be included for the submission. So again, I will repeat that. All colors of the same Pantone need to be on the same layer and grouped together. Okay, guys? Awesome. And then we're going to get rid of any unused Pantones. We just go to our Swatches panel and hit Select All Unused to get rid of all of the default colors that Illustrator just likes to place into your documents. Just that way, we're only left with black and our Pantones that we've selected. And this is the final result of my piece. We've come very far. And again, I apologize that my computer wasn't working, guys, but we are at this time going to be taking general questions, and I'm going to be walking around after Q&A so you guys can actually spend the maximum amount of time actually working on this piece. Because I know I gave you guys a crazy deadline to enter this design competition. Again, the first place winner will get their poster printed, courtesy of Mama Sauce, and everybody who's currently in this live workshop gets a poster. Yeah. It's pretty awesome. And then also, the first place winner and the runner-up are going to receive a Art of Lettering kit worth $100. You're going to get a custom pencil pouch that I personally made for this workshop. And you're going to get a ton of micron pens and erasers, just everything you need to kind of set you up right for your lettering. Okay, guys, at this point, I am taking questions. And she's going to come around with the microphone so we can do this right. It's like, notice me.
Okay. No, I was just wondering, how many colors? Is it 3 colors?
Yeah, we're going to stick to 3 colors. Great question, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. That was my question.
Okay, just real quick. I know the point of hand lettering is to...
Oh, I was like, where are you?
Right here.
Hi.
I know the point of hand lettering is to capture like those wonderful little imperfections, but should you absolutely never like copy a letter? Like say, like in timelessness, there's 4 S's.
Mm-hmm.
Should you never copy a letter and use it again in the same word?
I try to avoid it because I do like the individuality of the characteristics being a little bit different, but it's not going to be the end of the world if you're on a time crunch. Or maybe you're just feeling lazy that day, you want to duplicate it. Because remember, you can always go in with the pen, especially if you're using the image trace tool, you could easily remove a few anchor points or place a couple new ones just so that way they still are similar but not exactly the same, so they don't look like a direct copy. But yeah, that's the point of lettering, isn't to make every character different. It's really just have a better visual solution to anything that requires type, or else why would we just use a typeface?
If we wanted to make like our own texture, like in Photoshop, would that work with the poster, like over the top or something?
You'd have to vectorize it. So if you want to go ahead and I know a lot of people, and again, Mary Kate McDivitt, what she'll actually do is she'll print out her lettering, and then she'll trace it, and she'll take maybe a brush pen or a pencil. It's like, say if you want to, let's use the example of chalkboard lettering. So a good little trick is to take a normal pencil and fill in your lettering, and just go like this. You don't have to stay inside the lines. And then you put it into Photoshop, and then you mask it out so it's just over your type. And then you go to Image Trace, vectorize it, and place it on top, and it looks just like chalkboard lettering. I just used that, I think, for a David Bowie piece I did, dedication last month. It's pretty cool.
Do I?
Read. Do that on purpose. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, I have a question. You said before nothing less than 6 words. What if you did 7?
Yeah, like if there's a quote that you really want to do, if you guys want to give yourself more work, you're more than welcome. I was just trying to set a baseline. If it's 7, if it's 15 words, if it's 20 words, great. If you have that kind of time, I bow down to you.
Thank you.
Are you guys ready to workshop it up? Any other questions? All right, guys. For those of you online, I'm going to go ahead and walk around and help some people individually. Again, please email me at dina@lettershop.com to submit any pieces for critiques. This design competition is only for the people who are physically here in the workshop, but I'm so grateful that you guys were able to come today and watch me and learn a little bit about hand lettering both today and yesterday. And again, I really do hope that you go to lettershop.com, you sign up for my blog, and you will receive free lettering tips every week. And also, don't forget, the hand lettering workbook is coming, and it is completely free. It's going to teach you everything you'd ever want to know about lettering. We're going to go over calligraphy. We're going to go over script, black letter, sans serif, everything that you can imagine. We're going to talk about vectorizing your lettering in every shape and style. It's going to be amazing, and it's going to be an ebook, and it will be available in 2017. All right, guys. It takes a long time to make that stuff, guys. Sorry, not a robot. All right, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and walk around. Any teachers that are here, I know we kind of breezed through this sucker, but I really wanted to give you guys the opportunity to be more hands-on, and then I'm available here for any questions and critiques, okay? All right, thanks, guys.